The Galactic Emperor was known for his cruelty. When he lost a war against the Terran Federation, everyone expected executions or exile. Instead, he sent a message to Earth. He said he wanted peace. And as a symbol of that peace, he sent his 3 daughters to a small human colony for what he called re-education. The people of the colony were afraid. No one wanted to host alien royalty, especially daughters of the man who had once tried to destroy humanity. But one man volunteered. His name was Daniel Hayes. He was not a soldier or a politician. He was a teacher. Daniel's school was small, made of steel and glass at the edge of the colony. He taught history, art, and empathy. When the Emperor's shuttle landed, the ground shook. The ramp opened, and 3 alien girls stepped out, tall, elegant, their eyes glowing with colors no human had seen before. The eldest, Serafina, spoke first. Her voice was calm, but her words cut like a knife. "Human," she said, "we do not need your lessons. We came because Father ordered it. Do not mistake this for obedience." Daniel only smiled. He bowed slightly and said, "Then let's begin with that. Why do you hate us so much?" That question silenced the guards and even the wind. The alien princesses stared at him as if he had spoken blasphemy. From that moment, something changed. In the following days, Daniel taught them things their empire had banned. He taught them to paint, to read human poetry, and to understand what mercy meant. At first, they mocked him. But soon, something inside them began to shift. Serafina started to ask questions about the wars. The second princess, Lyra, began sketching human faces in her notebook. And the youngest, Eri, laughed for the first time in her life. The guards reported everything to the Emperor, but the reports confused him. His daughters were changing. They were smiling in the company of humans. They were eating human food, wearing human clothes, and talking about peace. Months passed. Daniel never treated them like royalty. He treated them like students. And slowly, like friends. But deep inside, he feared what would happen when the Emperor called them back. Then one night, everything changed. A rebel group attacked the colony. Their goal was to kidnap the Emperor's daughters to use them as bargaining chips. Daniel fought to protect them, using nothing but old defense drones and his own courage. When the attackers broke through the school walls, Daniel stood between them and the princesses. He was bleeding, but he refused to move. Something inside Serafina broke at that sight. For the first time, she saw a human willing to die to protect her. When the attackers fled, the princesses fell silent. That night, Serafina stayed beside Daniel as he slept on the infirmary bed. She touched his hand, watching his chest rise and fall. Her heart felt strange. Warm. Alive. That was the moment when the daughters of the most powerful alien in the galaxy began to question everything they were taught. And none of them knew that this small human colony would soon become the spark that would rewrite the stars. The morning after the attack, silence filled the colony. Smoke still hung in the air. Daniel's small classroom was half destroyed. Broken glass crunched under his boots as he moved through the ruins, trying to salvage what he could. The 3 princesses followed him. Their silk uniforms were torn and smeared with dust. They looked less like royalty now, and more like lost daughters far from home. Daniel stopped beside a fallen chair and sighed. "This was where we learned about empathy," he said softly. Lyra tilted her head. "Empathy?" He smiled faintly. "It means feeling another person's pain, even when it's not your own." Eri knelt, picking up a burned page from a book. It showed a painting of an old Earth mother holding her child. "She protected her young," Eri whispered. Daniel nodded. "That's what every real leader does." Serafina said nothing. Her eyes were fixed on Daniel's arm, still wrapped in blood-stained bandages. He had almost died protecting them. And he never asked for thanks. Later that day, Daniel limped to the colony's greenhouse. He wanted to check on the crops, but found the princesses already there. They were kneeling in the dirt, trying to replant seedlings torn out during the attack. Their elegant hands, used to jewels and royal meals, were now covered in soil. "You don't have to do that," Daniel said. Seraphina looked up. We want to. Her voice was steady, but her eyes glimmered with something new, humility. Lyra smiled faintly. When we were small, our father told us the soil of conquered worlds was unworthy to touch. But this, it feels alive. Daniel watched them work, feeling a quiet pride rise in his chest. They were learning what no empire could teach: humanity. That night, the power grid failed across the colony. Darkness swallowed everything. Daniel went out with a lantern to fix the circuit. When he returned, the princesses were sitting together around a small candle, whispering softly in their alien tongue. He sat nearby. What are you talking about? Eri smiled shyly. We were remembering songs from home. Lyra added. Our mother used to sing to us before bed. She said songs can heal hearts. Daniel leaned back, staring at the flickering light. Then maybe you should sing one tonight. Seraphina hesitated. It's forbidden outside the royal house. He smiled. So is peace in your empire. For a long moment, there was silence. Then Seraphina began to sing. Her voice filled the room, strange and beautiful. It sounded like wind passing through silver glass. Even the generators outside seemed to hum with it. Daniel closed his eyes, listening. The melody carried sadness, love, and something ancient, hope. When she stopped, tears shimmered in Lyra's eyes. Daniel whispered, That song could change worlds. Seraphina's gaze met his. Her heart raced. She felt an ache she had never known, something warm and frightening at the same time. She turned away quickly. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. He looked out the window, watching the stars that once carried warships. Now they carried questions. Why had the Emperor trusted him? And what would happen when these three girls, now smiling, learning, and feeling, returned home? Meanwhile, far across the galaxy, the Emperor sat on his dark throne. His advisors whispered that his daughters were growing too close to the humans. The Emperor's eyes glowed with fury. Prepare the fleet, he said coldly. I will see what this human has done to my blood. Back on the colony, Daniel didn't know that war was already coming for him. But that night, as he watched the princesses laugh around the candlelight, he smiled softly. Because for the first time, they weren't daughters of an empire. They were just three young women learning what it meant to be alive. 2 weeks passed after the attack. The colony began to heal, but a strange silence hung in the air. Daniel could feel it, like static before a storm. The children had returned to class, the walls had been rebuilt, but the peace felt fragile. The three princesses were different now. They laughed with the human children. They played games after lessons. Seraphina even helped Daniel teach. Lyra loved to draw, and her art covered the walls. Eri followed Daniel everywhere, asking endless questions about human life, human families, and human love. But far above the colony, hidden in orbit, a massive ship watched. The imperial crest burned red across its hull. Inside, the Emperor's eyes glowed with cold fury as he read the reports. His daughters had stopped wearing royal insignias. They had started calling their teacher Daniel. The word father appeared once in their transmissions. The Emperor's hands tightened on his throne. Prepare a transmission, he ordered. The next day, Daniel was fixing a calm tower when a message arrived. The signal burned across the sky like fire. Every screen in the colony flickered on. And there he was, the Emperor himself. His voice thundered through the air. Human Daniel Hayes. You were given the highest honor in my empire's history. You were to re-educate my daughters. Yet you have filled their minds with weakness. Daniel stood still, sweat beading on his neck. All around him, colonists stopped what they were doing. The alien daughters appeared beside him, their faces pale. Seraphina stepped forward. Father, you misunderstand. He showed us. Silence! The Emperor roared. You will return immediately. You have forgotten who you are. The youngest, Eri, grabbed Daniel's sleeve. Her voice shook. Please don't let him take us. Daniel's heart pounded. He didn't know what to say. He looked into Seraphina's eyes and saw fear, and something deeper. Trust. The Emperor's voice continued colder now. You have 1 rotation to prepare. When my fleet arrives, you will deliver them to my envoy. Refuse, and I will burn your colony from orbit. The screen went dark. The silence that followed was worse than the message. Lyra fell to her knees, trembling. Eri began to cry. Seraphina stood tall, but her hands were shaking. Daniel looked at them one by one. You're not going anywhere, he said quietly. Eri blinked. But he'll destroy everything. Daniel nodded. Then we'll give him something he doesn't expect. That night, the colony's lights were dimmed. Daniel gathered the colonists in the central hall. He explained what was coming. Many were afraid. Some wanted to surrender. But others stood with him. We've fought worse than threats, said an old miner. Another added, if he wants a war, he'll find humans don't kneel easy. The princesses watched in silence as the humans prepared defenses. They had seen armies before, disciplined, cruel, metallic. But this was different. These people fought not for conquest, but for each other. Later, as the stars dimmed outside, Seraphina approached Daniel. You don't understand my father, she whispered. He never bluffs. Daniel looked at her, his expression calm. Neither do we. She stared at him, searching his face. Why do you care so much? Daniel smiled softly. Because I see what you're becoming. And I won't let him take that away. Her eyes glimmered. For the first time in her life, Seraphina felt something stronger than fear. Hope. But far above, the Emperor's fleet was already on its way. Dozens of warships cut through the dark, their engines burning like suns. In their center, a massive flagship carried the Emperor himself. He leaned forward and whispered, If my daughters no longer know who they are, I will remind them. On the colony below, Daniel stood at the edge of the landing field, watching the stars. He knew tomorrow would bring fire. But he also knew something the Emperor did not. He wasn't just defending 3 alien girls. He was defending what it meant to be human. The Emperor's fleet shimmered above the planet like a second sky. Every light in the colony flickered as the ships entered orbit. The people gathered outside, watching in silence. They knew what was coming. Inside the school, Daniel sat at his desk. The alien daughter stood before him, dressed in simple human clothes. They no longer looked like princesses. They looked like people torn between 2 worlds. Seraphina's voice broke the silence. We can't let him destroy you. We should go back. Daniel shook his head. If you go back, he'll never let you return. He'll make you forget everything. Lyra whispered. Maybe we already have no choice. Daniel rose from his chair. He walked to the window, watching the sky burn with light from the Imperial fleet. You always have a choice, he said softly. That's what being human means. And now, it's what being alive means too. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Eri walked forward and took Daniel's hand. Her voice trembled. I choose to stay. Lyra looked at her sister, her eyes filled with tears. I used to believe obedience was strength. But now I see it was fear. I'm staying too. Seraphina turned away. Her heart ached. Her father's voice echoed in her mind, the weight of her empire pressing down on her chest. But when she looked back at Daniel, standing calm and wounded, she realized she was afraid of only one thing, losing what he had shown her. Finally, she whispered, Then I stay as well. Daniel's breath caught for a moment. He knew what that meant. It wasn't rebellion anymore. It was a declaration of war. That night, the colony prepared for the worst. Ships were hidden in caves. Old defense turrets were repaired. Every man and woman took up a role. But amidst the fear, something powerful spread, a quiet unity. Seraphina moved through the people, helping where she could. For the first time, humans looked at her not as an enemy, but as one of their own. Children smiled at her. A mother pressed food into her hands. It made her heart twist with a warmth she had never known. Meanwhile, Lyra worked beside Daniel in the communications room. They tried to find a way to send a message beyond the fleet's jammers. Her eyes met his often, and every glance felt heavier than words. Eri painted symbols of peace on the colony walls, her small hands steady despite the shaking ground. When night fell, Serafina climbed to the roof of the school. Daniel followed her. The sky was a sea of fire, with the Emperor's ships glowing like angry stars. She spoke quietly. "He will come for us himself. He never trusted others to do his work." Daniel nodded. "Then I'll talk to him." Serafina turned sharply. "You can't. He'll kill you." "Maybe. But if I don't try, everyone here dies anyway." She stepped closer, her voice trembling. "Why risk everything for us?" Daniel looked at her. "Because somewhere in you, I see what humanity was meant to be." Her lips parted, but no words came. For a heartbeat neither moved. Then the distant thunder of descending ships broke the silence. The Emperor was coming. Serafina's eyes filled with tears she refused to shed. "If he lands, he will not speak. He will destroy." Daniel smiled faintly. "Then I'll make him listen before he does." The next morning, the colony stood in formation. Dust rose in the cold light as the Emperor's flagship touched down outside the perimeter. The air itself seemed to bow before his presence. He emerged, draped in black armor, his eyes burning like stars. Behind him marched hundreds of soldiers. Serafina, Lyra, and Eri stepped forward beside Daniel. The Emperor's gaze locked on them. "You shame me," he said. "You were born to rule the stars. And now you stand beside a human farmer." Serafina's voice rang clear. "He is not a farmer. He is more of a king than you have ever been." The Emperor's hand rose. Energy built in his palm. But Daniel stepped forward before he could strike. "Stop," Daniel said quietly. "If you destroy this colony, you'll prove everything your daughters have begun to doubt." The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "You think you can teach me?" Daniel's voice stayed calm. "No. But I can show you what they learned." He turned to the people behind him, human and alien alike, standing shoulder to shoulder. "They learned that power means nothing without compassion. That mercy builds more than fear ever will. And that love can rewrite even the cruelest of empires." For the first time, the Emperor hesitated. He saw his daughters' faces, filled with defiance, but also peace. Something flickered in his eyes. Old memories. A mother's laughter long gone. But pride burned them away. His voice turned cold again. "Then I will burn your lessons from their hearts." As his soldiers raised their weapons, the colony alarms blared. Daniel shouted, "Take cover!" Serafina grabbed his arm. "No! If he fires, the children." A beam of light shot from the sky, striking the ground near the colony. The world shook. The war for their souls had begun. The first blast shook the valley like thunder. Flames rose where the Emperor's energy strike hit, painting the night sky in red and gold. The colony trembled, yet no one ran. Humans and alien daughters alike stood shoulder to shoulder, ready to defend what had become their home. Daniel sprinted through the chaos, directing survivors to the underground shelter. Dust and smoke choked the air, but his voice carried strength. "Get the children inside! Keep the generators running!" Eri followed close behind him, clutching a medkit almost bigger than herself. She was terrified, but she refused to leave. "Teacher, I can help!" she cried. Daniel looked at her and nodded. "Then help me keep them safe." Meanwhile, Serafina and Lyra joined the defense team on the colony's outer walls. Human soldiers handed them weapons. At first, they hesitated. Royal hands had never held human guns. But when they saw the enemy ships descending, they lifted them without another word. Serafina's voice cut through the static. "Aim for their drones! Disable, don't kill!" The humans obeyed her command without question. Even in battle, her presence was like a shield, calm, commanding, full of fire. Above them, the Emperor watched the fight from his command deck. His eyes narrowed. Instead of chaos and surrender, he saw courage. Instead of hatred, he saw unity. It infuriated him. He turned to his officers. "Deploy the royal guard. Bring me the teacher alive." Back on the ground, the colony's defenses began to falter. The shields flickered. The power core was damaged. Daniel knew they couldn't hold forever. He ran toward the main reactor, coughing through the smoke. Lyra followed him, trying to reroute energy through a console. Her delicate fingers flew over the controls. Sweat ran down her forehead. I can stabilize it, but it will overload in 10 minutes. Daniel smiled faintly. Then let's buy those 10 minutes. Suddenly, the wall exploded. Soldiers in black armor stormed through, weapons blazing. Daniel pushed Lyra behind cover. He picked up a fallen blaster and fired back, his hands steady even as debris rained down. Serafina arrived seconds later, her face streaked with dirt. She grabbed Daniel's shoulder. You're going to get yourself killed! He met her gaze, calm even under fire. Not if it means saving you. Her heart twisted. She had seen courage before, but not like this. This wasn't the courage of a warrior seeking glory, it was the courage of a man who loved more than he feared. Together they fought through the smoke, protecting the wounded, holding the line. At one point, Serafina was struck by a shockwave that sent her crashing into a wall. Daniel dropped his weapon and ran to her side. Her armor was cracked, blood glimmering faintly beneath her pale skin. Stay with me, he said, voice shaking. She smiled weakly. Humans are louder than I thought. Daniel pressed a hand against her wound, his own hands trembling. If you die here, what was all this for? Her eyes softened. For something worth dying for. She reached up and touched his face. When this ends, no matter what happens, promise me you'll live. Daniel's voice broke. Only if you promise to stay. Above them, the Emperor's command ship began to descend through the clouds. Its shadow darkened the valley. The air turned electric. And then silence. Every soldier stopped firing as the ship landed near the ruins of the school. The Emperor himself stepped out. His armor gleamed under the burning sky. Behind him marched the royal guard, silent as statues. Daniel stood between him and the princesses. The Emperor's gaze burned into him. You dare stand against the throne of the galaxy? Daniel's voice was quiet but steady. No. I stand for the people your throne forgot. The Emperor raised his hand, energy building in his palm again. But before he could strike, a voice rang out, Serafina's. Father, stop! She stood beside Daniel, her body weak but her voice strong. If you destroy them, you destroy us too. Her words echoed across the battlefield. Lyra and Aerie stepped forward as well, standing in front of Daniel. The Emperor froze. For a heartbeat, time stopped. Serafina looked at her father with tears in her eyes. You sent us here to be re-educated. You were right. We learned what power truly is. It's not fear. It's not obedience. It's love. The Emperor's face twisted with rage and disbelief. Love is weakness, he shouted. Daniel stepped forward. Then maybe weakness is what the universe needs. The Emperor's hand trembled. He could strike them all down in a moment. But when he looked into his daughters' faces, he saw something he couldn't destroy, his own reflection, softened by hope. His hand lowered. The soldiers hesitated, confused. The silence grew heavy. Then, behind him, one of the commanders shouted, He hesitates! Fire on the humans! A blast struck the ground near Daniel. He fell, blood searing his side. Serafina screamed and dropped beside him. No! She grabbed his hand. Her tears fell on his face as the battle raged around them. Daniel's voice was faint. Don't stop teaching him. Her heart shattered. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel like a princess. She felt human. She stood, her eyes glowing bright gold, her voice breaking the air like thunder. No more killing! And for a moment, the battlefield froze. Every weapon, every soldier, every ship stopped. The Emperor stared at her in silence, his heart torn between pride and sorrow. He had just seen something impossible. His daughter had inherited not his power, but the human's courage. The smoke cleared slowly. The air shimmered with heat, and the scent of ash filled every breath. For a moment, the entire battlefield stood still, thousands of eyes fixed on one sight. Seraphina stood in front of her wounded teacher, her hands glowing with energy brighter than any weapon. The royal soldiers hesitated, their armor humming but their hearts uncertain. They had never seen anyone stand against the emperor and live. Daniel lay motionless on the ground, blood seeping through his torn shirt. Lyra pressed her hands against the wound, whispering, "Stay with us, please." Eri knelt beside her, sobbing quietly. "Teacher, you can't go yet. You promised." Seraphina raised her head slowly, her voice clear and trembling. "This ends now. No more blood. No more fear." The Emperor's cloak fluttered as he stepped forward. His voice was low, shaking with anger. "You think you can command me?" Seraphina met his gaze, unflinching. "No. I'm asking you to remember what it means to be alive." The ground vibrated under the weight of his fury. "You have forgotten who you are," he said. Seraphina's voice softened. "Then let me remind you. I am your daughter. And he—" She looked back at Daniel, still breathing faintly. "Taught me how to be more than that." The Emperor froze. For the first time in his reign, he didn't know what to say. He saw in her eyes the same fire her mother once had, the woman he had loved before power turned his heart to iron. Behind him, his commanders grew restless. One whispered, "Your Majesty, they're unarmed. End this." But another hesitated. "Sir, your daughter's energy signature, it matches yours." The Emperor turned sharply. "What are you saying?" "She's evolving," the soldier stammered. "She's merging her energy with something human. It's impossible." Seraphina closed her eyes. Her hands pulsed with light that rippled across the battlefield. Every weapon powered down. Every drone fell from the sky. Even the Emperor's armor flickered. "What are you doing?" he shouted. Her voice echoed like a heartbeat. "I'm ending the war." The light spread wider, washing over the colony. The explosions faded. The fire stilled. For a few moments, there was only silence, and the sound of breathing. When the glow dimmed, Seraphina collapsed to her knees. Daniel stirred weakly behind her, his hand reaching for hers. She turned, eyes wet with tears, and whispered, "You're alive." He smiled faintly. "I told you, teachers don't quit easily." The Emperor stood motionless. All around him, his soldiers lowered their weapons. They didn't understand what had just happened, but they felt it. The power that ruled them for decades had been broken, not by a war, but by compassion. Seraphina walked toward her father slowly. Her steps were shaky, but her voice was strong. "Father, I know you wanted to protect us through control. But you only built walls around yourself. Look at them," she said, pointing toward the humans. "They're not your enemies. They're what we should have been." The Emperor's voice cracked. "You don't understand. The galaxy only obeys strength." Daniel, still bleeding, called out softly, "Then maybe it's time the galaxy learns what true strength is." The Emperor's hands trembled. He had conquered hundreds of worlds, destroyed fleets, silenced rebellions. But he could not conquer the sight of his daughter kneeling beside a dying human, shielding him with her life. He turned his eyes toward the sky. For the first time, the stars looked distant and cold. "What have I done?" he whispered. Seraphina reached out and took his hand. "You can still change it," she said gently. "Start with us. Start with him." The Emperor looked at Daniel. A human, fragile, bleeding, defiant. A man who had taught his daughters to love, to think, to feel. A man who had broken an empire without a single weapon. Finally, the Emperor lowered his head. "Call off the attack," he said. His voice was quiet, but it carried across the valley. "Stand down." The royal guards obeyed instantly. Engines powered off. Ships drifted to silence. The great storm of war ended with a whisper. Lyra gasped and hugged Eri tightly. The colonists emerged from their shelters, staring in disbelief. For the first time in history, the Empire's army had bowed before humans. Daniel smiled weakly as Seraphina knelt beside him. "You did it," he whispered. She shook her head, tears glimmering. No. We did it. He squeezed her hand faintly. Then promise me one thing. Anything, she said. Don't let the galaxy forget this day. Teach them what it means to be human. Her lips trembled. I will. As dawn rose, the Emperor stood apart, staring at the horizon. He had lost his pride, but gained something greater, the truth. He turned to Daniel. Human, you've done what no army could. You've changed the blood of my house. What do you want in return? Daniel closed his eyes. Peace, he said. Just peace. The Emperor nodded slowly. For my daughters, and for you, teacher of men and monsters, you shall have it. Years passed. The war that once darkened the stars became a story told in whispers. The colony rebuilt itself, not as a human outpost, but as the first home shared by two species. Humans and aliens worked side by side, planting, teaching, healing. The land that once burned under the Emperor's wrath now bloomed with green fields and silver towers. And at the heart of it all stood the old school, the place where everything began. The children called it the house of the teacher. Inside, portraits hung along the walls. One showed Daniel Hayes, standing with his quiet smile, his eyes filled with patience. Beside him were the three daughters of the Emperor, Seraphina, Lyra, and Eri. Their faces shone not with royalty, but with peace. Daniel had survived that final day, though his body never fully healed. He had refused titles, medals, or wealth. Instead, he spent his years teaching both humans and aliens the same lessons he had once taught those three girls: kindness, courage, and the power of understanding. The Emperor kept his word. He withdrew his fleets and rebuilt his empire into something new. He ruled not by fear, but by counsel. And when he died, the galaxy mourned him as the Emperor who listened. Seraphina became his successor. Her reign was unlike any before. She opened borders, invited humans into the royal academies, and abolished the laws that once divided species. When the galaxy saw a human and an alien working together, they called it the Age of the Teacher. Lyra became an ambassador, traveling between worlds to spread Daniel's teachings. Her art filled temples and cities, each mural showing stories of the colony, of fire turned to light. Eri led the first interstellar relief corps, rescuing children from war zones and famine. Whenever people asked why she helped so many, she always smiled and said, "Because once, a teacher saved me." But Daniel himself grew old. He walked slower, his hair silver like the dawn. Yet every morning, he would sit under the same tree beside the school, surrounded by young students who wanted to hear the stories of the past. One day, as the sun rose over the valley, Seraphina returned. She stepped off her royal ship without guards, wearing simple robes. When she saw him sitting beneath the tree, her eyes softened. He looked up and smiled. "I was wondering when my favorite student would visit." She knelt beside him, her crown catching the morning light. "You taught me everything, Daniel. I wanted to show you what your lessons became." Behind her, the ship's doors opened. 3 small children ran out, 2 with human eyes, 1 with faintly glowing skin. They laughed as they played among the wildflowers. Daniel's smile widened. "They're beautiful." Seraphina's voice trembled. "They're the future." He reached out, placing his hand over hers. "I told you once to teach the galaxy what it means to be human," he said softly. "You've done better than that. You taught it what it means to love." Tears glimmered in her eyes. She whispered, "We named the first one after you. Daniel the Younger. He asks about you every night." The wind rustled the leaves. Children's laughter echoed across the field. And for the first time in his long life, Daniel felt the peace he had always dreamed of. As the day faded into gold, he looked at the horizon. "Seraphina," he said quietly, "promise me something. Anything. When I'm gone, don't let them build statues of me. Let them remember the lessons, not the man." She nodded through her tears. "You'll never be forgotten." That night, as stars filled the sky, Daniel closed his eyes for the last time. He left the world with a gentle smile, the same one that had changed an empire. Years later, the galaxy still spoke of him. They called him the teacher who taught the stars to feel. In the capital, a new monument stood, not of kings or conquerors, but of a teacher sitting under a tree, surrounded by children of every color and kind. Above it, a single line was carved into stone. He taught us that the greatest strength is the heart that dares to care. And under the same endless sky, Seraphina's children grew, laughing together, half human, half alien, and entirely hope. Two worlds had become one. And humanity, at last, had lived up to its name,